Good morning, everybody. Just letting everybody join in now. Just waiting on a few more folks to kind of shuffle in. I'm Paul Rossi with 910 Drones. 910 Drones is based in Fayetteville. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes, not a couple more minutes, but we'll just allow maybe a minute to go by, get a few more folks in. And then what I want to do is go through the different classes of drones, the topics, what we're going to discuss today. And I'll introduce our fellow guest who will be helping me go through these different drones, platforms, trainers, commercial, enterprise drones. And then we'll touch on some of the drones currently being used for delivery purposes and point out some of the things happening with air taxis. So at this time, I'll go ahead. Looks like we've got pretty much anyone that might be joining in. So again, I am Paul Rossi, founder, COO of 910 Drones based in Fayetteville, North Carolina. We are helping individuals, businesses, and organizations leverage drones. We currently are working with 4 different high schools. So we have some understanding of what it is that that you educators are looking for and how to kind of help guide you through these different systems. So today we're going to discuss the 5 different classes or topics of drones. Again, that is going to be trainers, the smaller drones that are more affordable. We'll discuss commercial platforms, enterprise platforms, which our guest is going to be able to really speak to and discuss what's happening in the industry. And then again, we're going to touch on delivery drones and pilotless air taxis. So without wasting any more time, I want to bring in Jon McBride with Rocky Mountain Unmanned Systems, RMUS for short. John, we had that conversation. I went ahead, threw both out, but I want to bring you in, introduce yourself. Hey, John.
Hey, how are you?
Good, good. So it's just RMUS, right? Jon McBride, RMUS.
It is, and it's definitely time for a haircut right now because I'm covering my logo with my hair. That's my spot to know when to cut my hair is when so yes, John at RMUS, Rocky Mountain Unmanned Systems. Jon McBride doing drones for almost 20 years now, specifically creating drones for specialized stuff. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, what we want to talk about first is like what I would consider kind of like trainer drones, because what we're using them for and what we're seeing a little bit in the industry is that these smaller drones, they don't have the same maybe GPS lock or capabilities. So it's great for being able to get these in the hands of beginner, and to be honest, they're not as expensive, right? So a drone like we have here, maybe like a Tello drone, which is inexpensive, but why might this, how is this beneficial? Like, especially in a classroom, maybe environment for introducing students to drones? Thoughts?
Well, so the big one and the challenge with any learning how to fly a drone is that initial understanding that there is controls and things that you have to do in order to fly any ship, so there is some automation in things, but the baseline is basically to still understand the complexities of tying your brain to what your hands are doing and then visualizing what you're seeing and practicing to do that. That does take a bit of practice. In a training setting, classroom environment, obviously you want something smaller if you could handle it so that it doesn't become a problem hitting somebody or banging or less breakage. It's not as expensive. These options are there so that, again, we can get very comfortable flying a non-automated drone for the best sense of the words there, and be comfortable when we do step into that.
And what I'd say is amazing about this is that you can connect a remote to it. right? We can connect that remote with the joysticks, like a screen pops into it. I mean, it's almost like being like flying with a Phantom 4, flying even say a Matrice 210. You've got that, the same thing, push, yaw left, yaw right, up, down. You can get the remote inexpensive. This drone itself with a battery, right, $100. But the flight time on it compared to some of these other $60, $70 drones, like 10 minutes of flight,
Yeah.
which is like, it's incredible, right? How much, I mean, from a training standpoint, not 3 minutes. What can you do? And you could do so much in 10 minutes from, circling. Um, what are your thoughts? I guess just
Well, in what we teach, because we have a number of people that actually are doing baseline, never flown before training, never touched a drone in their lives. We do have a bit more, GPS denial, which basically means that it's not going to hold a position because it's not GPS. So it's going to want to drift and move around, and that forces the pilot to think again a bit more about what their stick movements are going to be. From these examples or these kinds of things, we can create levels of complexity in flying. So as you had mentioned, flying in a circle really well in every orientation. It nose away, tail in, turn it around in a circle, fly in a box. Trying to gain altitude. We also do one where we're doing what we call point of interest, where we're dropping and the nose comes down. We're controlling altitude.
Yeah, and John, I would say they did see the NIST, because this I maybe didn't mention just to you. This is part of a 2-week event. So yesterday, these instructors, they had a NIST video where they were able to see the different buckets, and one of those devices has those buckets on descending, can't think of the words here, heights, right? So
You're welcome that they have that, because I actually was in Virginia, and that was one of the examples that I had told them that this would be a good overall skill to understand, and force them again to use multiple sticks at one time, multiple inputs at one time. We don't typically drive a car at any given time where we grab the steering wheel and just make a quick change and make a quick change and make a quick change, and then push the throttle and then push the throttle, and then and then shift the gear, and we do it separately. Eventually our brain says, let's put all of these things together, and I can manage to move around in a space without injuring and hurt. And we have to be able to coordinate that all together. And by having a trainer drone that doesn't have all of the whoop-de-doos of stability in there, allows you to build up those skill sets. And
Right, and then you could put a small indoor NIST thing together for this, and on a rainy day in a classroom, you're still flying. You got to push the desk, and again with coronavirus, we're going to get back to that in classroom environment. So this is a great ship, stealing your term there.
Yeah.
And then also I wanted to, so there's other some of this, because I know some instructors already have some drones, right, that they might have acquired or students brought in or that are inexpensive. But even something like this where you have to use that remote, and like you said, you're coordinating where you're using both thumbs at the same time in order to climb altitude, rotate around a point of interest. You can do all that with these inexpensive drones, and that's why we got it turned on there. That's why they're great. And if they fall, they've got prop guards. The risk is just not there. And you can
they're very, very lightweight. So the inertia behind them, if they become out of control, is a lot smaller. So when you're moving around a phantom size, you have one there behind you. A phantom size drone inside of a very small space, and for some reason your student gets out of control with it or makes a mistake, it's a lot more inertia that can hit, break, and you're up to buying another machine. Buying really cheap, easy drones is a really great one, just to get that initial hands-on and try it out and see if it's going to be good. And
right.
Unfortunately, just like my car example, there are some people that just don't do it well. We already know there's not good drivers on the road. Well, we run into the same experiences. There's not good drone pilots. They sometimes just can't quite put it all together, and that takes time. It's not something that you're just gonna pick up and do.
It takes time to develop. Some people pick it up naturally, but even for the folks, and I tell everyone this, there's so many more jobs in the drone industry than just the piloting side. But here, you know, the focus is the 107 certification. So even if folks are interested in drones and they're not good pilots, like, you know, they can still, whether it's planning, mapping, analyzing data, engineering. So it's like there's so many other ways. The Mavic, I wanted just to throw some other drones out there for folks to check out, like the Mavic Mini, right? So now that came out. We have the Tello Rise, which is connected with DJI, but then this Mavic Mini comes out, a little bit bigger than this, right? And a 30-minute flight time. You know, it does have the GPS. It will not probably make 25-minute flight time. I apologize.
It's pretty close.
Yeah. So with that, it's like we're seeing this same ability, but being able to maybe take it now outdoors a little bit, inexpensive drone. That is the Mavic Mini. Don't have one to kind of put out there. Small battery, small drone. I think it might be positive for a classroom environment because we are seeing that platform used in the industry, aren't we?
Yeah. The Mavic Mini. So just the predecessors to these is this. Just the Mavic series in general was intended to be a small, portable, easy drone. And since the Mavic original has come out, there's 9 different versions. So it can be a little bit confusing. You know, there's the Mavic, there's the Mavic Platinum, there's the Mavic Air, there's the Mavic Air 2, there's the Mavic Mini, there's all of these different Mavic drones that are available. But for the most part, the new Mavic Mini it is really good. We've already seen these being used for public safety because they need something small to get down the hallways, clear buildings, look at real quick around a corner to make sure no one's there to interfere with the getting shot or anything like that. So yes, it's a very realistic, already bring it into that capacity. And
I guess it'd be like a flashlight, right? Like you have you have on a squad car a really bright light. You even have on fire trucks like even brighter lights, and you could call in maybe a helicopter with a super bright light. That doesn't mean each cop doesn't carry their own personal flashlight, right? So that they're ready to kind of put it out there. So a drone, a Mavic Mini, is being able to maybe put that out for that initial search, that initial pop-up. And with you talking about the Mavic series, I guess we can make the transition into talking more about commercial drones. And we can start really just with that Mavic series of aircraft and talk about the Zoom and the Pro. I would say right off the bat, any Facebook group that you jump in, the North Carolina one is one that I see a lot of the conversation in because it's local, and time again, it's like, hey, what drone should I get if I'm starting out from this commercial side? And I think this goes to the conversation that we were having a little bit earlier about megapixels. And everybody's, oh, you got to get the Mavic 2 Pro. You have to get the Mavic 2 Pro. And no one asks, well, what are you using it for? Oh, hey, I want a drone. What should I get? It's like, well, what are you using for it? The Mavic 2 Zoom is a phenomenal aircraft, right? 12 megapixels, not 20 megapixels. And if you're wanting to get close to something, but you're not a comfortable pilot, you need that standoff space, you got to go with the Mavic 2 Zoom, in my opinion. But I guess that's the major difference, 12, 20 megapixels with the ability to zoom. So I think right here, 12 megapixels, 20 megapixels, is it from an educational standpoint, right? For a teacher in a classroom, is there a huge difference? Is there any difference? And I'll kind of, take this a step further and say from mapping, and can you do mapping? Can you do modeling, right? Can you simulate these real world environments with 12 megapixels?
I think in general you can, but there's the, again, understanding that what are you trying to teach, and where is it that somebody's going to say, well, the quality isn't good enough because we used a 12 versus a 20. And if you're just doing, you know, normal, take a picture and just show the picture, and did you get a really good, was your ISO good, was your exposure good? I mean, a single one shot, was it good enough to be then tell a story later, whether it was an inspection, whether it was just a picture of a house, whether it was a beauty shot for a wedding? Do we understand well enough that right there, 12 megapixel, is good for these things? And is that what I've taught my students? Is that I've said 12 is great for this, but you have to have 20 in order to do these types of things. If you're going to blow up the wedding shot and put it on a billboard, you know, just one picture, is the resolution going to be good enough to make it big like that? You know, and that requirement might come into play. Mapping, I don't think it really matters, again, unless you're looking at a deliverable in which the requirements are there. But sometimes our customers don't even know what those requirements need to be. They don't even know what they are. So it's kind of a relative but not relative question, because it's like, what do you want to teach the students and which one's going to be good? If you have a 12 megapixel and you're showing students and you take a picture, we're still in the phase with a lot of people that they don't even know that it was 12 versus 20, looking at two different files of the same thing. They have no idea what the difference is.
So then I would say, from a mapping standpoint, and just kind of teeing it up here, like you can make maps and models through Pix4D drone deploy, right, with a 12 megapixel photo. So
yeah.
It's not that you have to have this 20 megapixel in order to, you know, again, if the end user is requesting that specific setting requirement, you know, right? But from a student, from just a training of students in a high school environment, I don't think you're going to have this big, oh, we have to go with this. You know, we can't get a Skydio or we can't get a this because it doesn't have 20 megapixels. So,
right.
The zoom, let's just say the Mavic 2 platform, for educators out there. If there's any questions, I guess specifically that any educators have regarding that Mavic series line, anyone that's tuning in, feel free to ask. But to just touch on it, it's a great aircraft. It folds up, flight time, 30, you know, advertised 30 minutes, regularly getting 27 minutes out of it. I guess we could touch on real quick is with that batteries, right? 30 minutes, but is that 30 minutes flying it down to zero?
That's the realistic thing. Then the challenge here that people always, again, it's usually with flight time, it's not a number that I'm like absolute. It's not an absolute ever. In perfect conditions and perfect environment, manufacturers will then say, yeah, it can possibly hit this amount of time from 100% to 0%, and that's feasible. But when we learn a little bit more about battery care, we learn, you know, I'm in Utah, I'm at 4,600 feet MSL, and my flight times are going to be a lot different than they are in, you know, somebody that's only 200 feet above sea level. They will be. And then I've got mountains that are just right next to me that put me up even higher. And so that does attribute to flight time overall. Even in a classroom setting, it doesn't, you know, it's the elevation. That's what it is. So I have a hard time always saying that, yes, I mean, I bought a drone and I expected it to fly for 30 minutes and it only hit in 24. And I come from the days when 5 minutes was a long time. 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, if I could increase that by 30 seconds, oh my gosh, I get, 30 more seconds to do something. Now people are looking at 6 or 7 or 10 minutes being a big a big
And
deal when it's already in the air for 25, you know?
yeah, and the thing is we can't say this is 30 minutes because in that, especially in that training environment, we're not flying it down, and these remotes are going to start beeping at you. So 15% low battery, beep, 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 10% low battery, beep, beep, beep. So 30 minutes if you're taking it to that next all the way down, but from an educational purpose, hey, we're not flying this thing to the point of potential failure. So you got to leave that cushion, and you got to have that space, especially with mapping. But what I want to bring in here and just do a screen share in order to kind of show off the different Mavics here. Because someone asked, what are the different Mavic platforms? So as we discussed earlier, we have the Mavic Mini, which is great. It's small, inexpensive. That Mavic 2 Air that came out, it's really a hybrid, right? A mixture between everything that's already happening. But what we're talking about here now is this Mavic 2 Pro, right? And the Mavic 2 Zoom. So these two, the difference being one has a zoom capability and the other has a 20 megapixel 1-inch sensor. From an industry standpoint, that standoff distance with the Mavic 2 Zoom, but not having that 20 megapixel sensor is what kind of has made people stay away from it, where it is not as important in the training environment. So these here are the two. John, I know you probably have a lot, and that's why I was just excited to have you on here. A lot of, I'm going to stop this here. You have a lot of video content, and I'm trying to put more out with 910 drones about the different things, but you go into depth in these different systems. Is that correct? Like on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest defining, points is that I really value is the educational standpoint of anything. It doesn't matter. The more you learn, the more you know, the better you become focused and as well understand exactly what it takes to get wherever you want to go. Again, I had mentioned I've been doing this for almost 20 years. And I'm still learning about new stuff every day, all the time. New equipment comes out. I got to figure out how it works, why it does what it does, why it was intended on its design. Maybe find certain use cases that a drone or anything will be good for. And so by that, we then, yes, publish a number of videos and educational understanding. I run several groups in Facebook to kind of get this content out there and show people that, you need to learn about what you're buying. You need to learn about why you're doing it.
So like if folks were to go to the Mountain Unmanned Systems YouTube page, they're going to be able to find videos about the Mavic 2, I guess more of that enterprise.
More of the enterprise. I mean, it's definitely more of the Mavic 2 Enterprise, but overall, I've got a number of videos that we've produced and put out there to understand even just
different systems,
drone stuff. I mean, there's just so much, and it can be overwhelming and very confusing to a lot of people. And I do sell hardware as well. So by doing that and taking on the internal education that I need to understand and then teach people how to use it. I mean, that's what teachers do. They take stuff and then regurgitate it and make it digestible and understandable.
Yeah. So, and I would hate now, I'm just seeing this, I'm showing a computer screen when I got the drone right here in my hand. So I do want to go back, let folks show you the Mavic 2 if you haven't seen it in person or seen a video. And then we'll kind of just move on to a couple of the other prosumer models out there. But this, I tell folks, it folds up to the size of a shoe. It's really incredible. These arms are folding out here. You pop a battery in, and you're kind of ready to go. You got a small battery, inexpensive, right? You can pack batteries. To compare this to the industry, because educators, that's what they're teaching. So we'll say, if you're doing video production, you can put this in a fly more kit with a few batteries. You can get out and go somewhere. And now you've got 2.5, 3 hours of time, and you don't need to plug into a wall or charge. And you're getting, it doesn't matter whether you're using the Zoom or the Pro, you're getting incredible video quality. You're getting amazing pictures, and it's just all collapsed up right there.
One thing I wanted to note, and kind of a key feature about the Mavic 2, which is not standard with a lot of the consumer electronics type products that DJI makes, is that you can bind 2 radios to the Mavic 2 Pro and the Zoom at the same time. You can have a trainer person with a radio that functions and flies, and then the actual trainee that actually has all of the same controls. So in a training environment, you can have your trainer doing something, or your trainee doing something, and then override or take over
your primary.
Yeah.
Right, your primary and your secondary.
You'd have to buy, obviously, a second radio. I actually, it's kind of funny because I just put out a video yesterday on how to do this with the Mavic 2 Enterprise, because the way you do it is slightly different, but it is available to be used like that on the Mavic 2. So
that's a great point, especially when you're moving into those more, like you're wanting to take students out, right? Because that's the thing. It's always being able to teach students in the classroom, in the environment, but then being able to go out to the community and do some real world training or education. So like you mentioned, being able to have, it's like a car, right? When you're doing driver's training, it's the instructor has his own controls, and at any point the instructor just overrides. So
well, there's also good at showing examples of stuff, right? So just say that you were going to do kind of a show them how to climb in an area and tilt the gimbal down and get this to happen, right? So that's what the shot they see. But when they start it, they do it way too fast. Then you still have the radio, and they can watch you do it on their radio and their screen and demonstrate it. This is how I wanted you to make it happen. And then without having to then transfer radios and here, look at my screen. If you look over here on the side, you see how I'm doing it. They can watch it right there. That's kind of a special thing about the Mavic 2 and the Mavic, the Mavic Pro and the Zoom.
So real quick, because I'm seeing these questions a little bit behind, but from Lashonda is asking, what mapping software is compatible with the Mavic Mini? I don't know if I'm almost 100% almost that there's no software that you can use to capture the images, but because the images are geotagged, you can input them into a software for processing.
Yes, we've already done this, and you are correct. There's not very many supported programs, and I've already seen in the comments here, there's a lot of them. There's Drone Deploy that can fly your drone. There's Pix4D that can fly your drone. There's Maps Made Easy. There's Leechy. There's GS Pro. There's blah. There's tons of them. Not all of them are compatible with all of the drone types and makers, but if they have GPS and that EXIF data or metadata is stored on the image, you can manually fly it, take some pictures, do a space, upload it just like you said into a mapping software, and it'll process for you.
Yeah, and then and also with the Mavic 2 Pro, Lashonda had said, doesn't the Mavic 2 Pro have problems with mapping because of the rolling shutter? And
well, I can cover this one real quick. So the rolling, like here's another one of those problems of people saying that it's not going to be good because there's a rolling shutter. You absolutely have to buy a global shutter to do, quality mapping. I am going to tell you again, you will not know the difference if you're not doing this in any capacity of absolute. If you're doing relative, it's negligible. I mean, there will be probably 2% of the world that even cares about a deliverable like that. And I work with these people daily. And so if they're, we already have surveyors using X5Ss that is a rolling shutter. That's not a global shutter. They then go over and use an X7, which happens to be a global shutter. And depending on that deliverable, they're perfectly fine running it with the X5S. No problem. But it depends on who you're going to give that to. Could you do a measurement off of it? Absolutely. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are just fine. The other problem with rolling shutter versus global shutter is that most people don't know how to change the camera settings to optimize it for how fast you're flying, how fast the pictures are going, what your shutter speed is going to be. I mean, you can adjust a lot of that to get over the I need to fly it fast with a global shutter, you know?
Yeah. And then I would say too, what we've seen recently with Skybrowse, which is, you know, you can take a Mavic 2 Pro and shoot video.
Yeah.
And you're shooting video. So
yes.
you're circling a point of interest. And again, we've seen coming out of Airborne Works, these folks that use ground equipment, they're saying, hey, with this Mavic 2, right, using Skybrowse, we have gotten the same accuracy as using, you know, typical ground equipment. So I think that if you're talking to folks in industry of like mapping, surveying and things, they might be heavy on the mechanical shutter side. But
Yeah.
talking about like marketing, ortho photos, right, for overlays and public safety, again, relative versus global or absolute. Right. And again, I would say on Friday, we're doing a mapping and modeling one. So we'll dive even further into that specifics. Now, I do want to go back. Indoor sport micro drone. Someone asked about, and this was in the very beginning, recommendations for indoor sport micro drone. I would say, and then if you have anything to add, you can, John. Using a Tello, you can, I don't know where it went. You can take a Tello, flew away. Here it is. You can take a Tello, you can take the phone and you can put it in a VR headset, right? So you can actually fly a Tello like your FPV and put some rings up in the classroom, and one student at a time flies the course and you just time it. And now you're racing drones. Anything to add, John?
Yeah, no, I mean, without getting super expensive on setups and building and programming and doing all these other things that sometimes are required when you get into racing stuff and whatnot. That's a great way to do it, and a very inexpensive way to do it is using a Tello with a screen. And you know, my son was very interested in this stuff when he was younger, and he definitely made his own hood before hoods were a thing, before VR was a thing. He made his own, you know, and strapped it on his head.
iPhone cord running out of it.
Yeah, somewhere I have a picture of that, of something he made so that he could fly a drone around using the phone. Now on other stuff, we're transmitting differently, 5.8, 2.4, all this other stuff. But my God, I mean, he was like 12, and he's made his own little thing to hold the phone so he could FPV it.
Yeah.
Pretty neat.
Right on. So send a link. I don't know if you have the link to, someone was asking if you could send the link to where you're.
Yeah, I actually, just because I had mentioned that I had just recently done a video. It was actually for the Mavic 2 Enterprise. It was for a Facebook group. And sometimes I'll publicly post those if it's really pertinent to a big audience. Okay. I haven't done that yet, so I haven't created that yet. It was just posted to one single group that actually kind of focuses on the technical side of the Mavic 2 Enterprise, but I can do that. That's not a problem.
Gotcha. Okay, and I'm getting to see drone racing not part of the DPI blueprint. So maybe just hold off a little bit on the drone racing. Maybe the DPI will be rolling that in at some point, but I know it's definitely a popular thing. And even with the local high schools that 910 Drones works with, like that's something that they want to do more. But, you know, you get FPV, you take things can get fun, right? When you get into that.
Well, if you have a camera.
Right, he said, but it's fun.
Yeah, if you have a camera on a drone, you know, instead of being an automated, if you have a camera on a drone and a device to view what that camera sees, you are flying FPV.
Right.
Whether you're racing or not does not matter. The skill set is still the same. The immersion of, like I said, my son built his own little thing, is to immerse himself into that space. And that's why the racing has become what it's become, because now it's a different feeling than just holding a controller far away with a picture and doing that. But
Right.
you know, like you're still flying the FPV regardless.
Right. And as Dr. Barber is saying, like this, for the DPI and for the instructors that are listening, and the teachers here in North Carolina, you know, what is being done here is the Part 107, and they are going mapping and modeling, because the goal is to produce professional pilots for the industry. So that is a point that we do want to make. So moving on to just some of these other, and what this will kind of do is, there's the Skydio, right? The Skydio series of aircraft that is making a splash. And this right here, like behind me, the Skydio 2. Which is unlike others. And I mean, have you had the opportunity to fly this drone, John? You're familiar with the Skydio and what's going on here. I'll do a quick screen share, because what I want folks, especially the educators, the teachers that are tuning in, is I want them to see and kind of take note and be able to look up, you know, these different companies, right? To be familiar with what's out there and what's available. Skydio really changing things up in autonomy, right? Where I think we see the industry going. So with that Skydio S2, or the S2, we're not seeing a development in sensor, camera, payload. The neat thing about this is its spatial awareness, or its ability to recognize its surrounding environment.
So a little bit on the engineering side of that, you know, you've got, since you have it in your hand, you've got 4K, basically, you've got a lot of information coming into the flight control. Cameras all on board to that thing. And instead of using a sensor that would be an infrared sensor or a radar sensor, you know, sending a sonic emitting radar pickup kind of a thing, sonic. We've got this multiple amount of cameras around the whole thing. It then actively maps its space. It kind of remembers where things are as it's flying around in its environment. One of the other things about the AI portion of it, and it's built in, is that most tracking software that uses the screen picks up a number of pixels. So just like my face, I mean, it can see my face right here. And most tracking software compares my face to what it is in the background. But the second I do this, the pixels have changed. Now it doesn't recognize what it was initially told to follow. The neat thing about the Skydio is that it has like 1 million images, literally 1 million images stored within its AI to recognize that I am a human being. Pick the human being, it follows the human being. It doesn't matter what direction it moves. It can see it. It has basically a huge database that's already built into the drone for specialized tracking like that. That's why it's really good at it, you know. So whereas other tracking software works slightly different than that. Again, usually a pixel recognition and tries to just compare it to the background or to the side of it. So.
Yes. And I got the screen shared right here. You know, 36 miles per hour, as you know, again, and I always want to hit on the battery, because 19 minutes, right? 19, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because that's the biggest thing. And that's why what we see with the Evo 2 that comes out 40-minute flight time, people just want to grab whatever has the most flight time, like as if that's what these makers are trying to hit. And we see, even though you can make it fly longer, is that ship worth flying?
Yeah.
Is the big question. But with Skydio, right, this is an autonomous drone. You have to be a pilot to fly it, right, and to understand its capabilities. But once you select that object, it just goes. And I've tracked vehicles at 35 miles per hour where I would never have even considered maybe doing that with some of the other drones that are out. And they're just killing it in regards to space. And the way I see it is, it's like, as a human, we have the ability to see peripheral vision and recognize what's here. We don't walk into something, right? We don't have a GPS, but we know, because we've been there before, like there's a desk here, or there's a book here, or something here, and how to maintain where we're at. And that's what this S2, or the Skydio 2 is all about. It's like, it knows its place in the world, and then it knows how to safely navigate through it.
Yeah, it's actually a really unique design overall of how, a lot of the other traditional, or the other drones are using their spatial awareness to avoid obstacles and whatnot. And the only bad, it's good and bad. The bad thing is the limitation, because it's using a camera to see where it is. There's no other sensors. Like I said, there's no sonar, there's no LiDAR, there's no other sensors that it's using. This becomes a problem when it's really dark. That's the only issue. So if a camera can't see where it's going at all because it's not lit up enough, that's the only problem, is that flying it in very dark spaces can be very challenging because it can't see. So
right, and I would say to that point is, it won't take off.
Yeah, exactly.
It's designed to where this aircraft, it trusts itself. Right? It trusts itself so much that if it can't detect, it won't get off the ground.
Well, it's bringing you back. It's bringing you back to the, you're just a human operator, and I'm smarter than you. So since I'm smarter than you, and we're hoping that you, and again, I understand you guys are not really teaching people drone racing and stuff like that, and I get it, but those skill sets, for an example, I just wanted to share something really quick. I had a guy come in that was taking one of my, early classes, like somebody that had not been instructed very much on how to fly and demonstrate landing and everything else. That was the course, that was my curriculum. And one of my students that showed up said he'd had 75 flights on a Phantom. 75 flights. I'm like, oh, fantastic. You'll be able to show some of these guys that have never touched a drone before exactly, how to do this. I won't be the only guy that knows.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this guy basically put the drone down, pushed the button on the app, watched it take off, collect data 75 times. And that's it. Even when it came to landing, fully automated, come down and land it. When I told him, what happens if you lose that GPS? Crickets. Like he didn't know how to do that. And so it became dangerous when we were doing examples of skill sets and showing me. He was dangerous. It wasn't even like, hey, you're a noob and you're listening to me. He's just doing whatever, and it became dangerous. And so familiarization of sticks. 100%.
What happens is, when you lose GPS in one of these aircraft, or compass, like I've had a compass failure on a Phantom 4 Pro because of not calibrating it. It kicks into ADI mode, and the Phantom 4, when it went into compass failure, I mean, it was more than just ADI mode. It was tilting back and forth. It wasn't just swaying. I mean, it was the horizon changed, and being able to bring that aircraft back to center, or hold center, pilot it down with that visual line of sight. In this, we're going off, but this is why you keep visual line of sight, is if something were to occur, you can see it down, you can bring it back safely.
You could have your app crash. You could have it stop working for some reason.
Freeze up.
Freeze on the screen. I mean,
yeah.
let's be realistic. It's a flying computer. It's a computer that when I have a problem with my computer sitting here right in front of me and it decides to freeze and block and stop, we just
Right.
power it back on. My phone is the same. You know, I just close the app and it's fine.
And it will happen.
That's different.
And it will happen if you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If you fly long enough, your DJI Go app, your Autel, your Skydio 2, these apps are going to close down, and it could be because you have a lot of other stuff running in the background, right?
Uh-huh.
Think when we have this cell phone and we have the internet with 100 tabs open, and we have TikTok and Words with Friends and Netflix and all these things have been open and running. It's like close some of those items out. But so I want to make a transition now into more enterprise stuff. And I know your experience with like Parrot. Would you say that? And we'll ease into this with price, like the Anafi Thermal as an enterprise level drone, not that's being maybe heavily used in the industry, but we start talking about thermal. Right? When we start talking about thermal cameras, I think that's when we make the transition into enterprise most certainly. So
Sure.
Classroom environment, being able to like bring in thermal for the students to fly. Maybe it's the dual, right? The Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual or the Parrot and Anafi Thermal. I don't have experience with it. So
yeah, there's a number of machines that are out
and
there.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this screen just so that educators are familiar with it. Again, this is in a little different line. Is this showing up?
Yep.
So
I'm actually doing a webinar right after this one. So I've got one right after this on the Anafi USA. And the Anafi USA has a thermal camera built into this. What you've got pulled up is the Anafi Thermal. The Anafi Thermal, the major difference between the two is the size of the sensor, the thermal sensor itself. So I've got a 160 by 120 on the Anafi Thermal. It does a really good job with up close showing relative temperature differences. Search and rescue it can be used for if you can get close enough. So the resolution is fairly what we would consider in the industry kind of a lower resolution, and detection of hot objects can be a little bit better if you get closer to it. Now, if you can't do that, like I said, you're searching for a person or you're doing a little bit bigger, need a little bit more detail. Of course, we can step up to other cameras and drones that have a higher resolution, 640 by 512, 336. These are traditionally used as a little bit higher thermal resolution so that detection can be done a little bit easier, comparison can be done a little bit easier. There's a number of things there in which we can basically talk about how that can go. But it's not, obviously when, you know, we're talking things that have more capability, especially with thermal, they go up in price. You can see this one even is at $1,900, you know, sitting here on Best Buy, $1,900 for a drone.
yeah.
I didn't bring one with me, but it's even smaller than a Mavic, you know, slightly smaller than a Mavic. But because of that thermal sensor, it gets up there in price just a bit. But there's so many things you can do with that thermal side, you know, that it's pretty amazing.
And now, oh no, I wanted to bring up the Anafi. That's right. Yes. John, thank you.
So now the Anafi USA has two cameras on there that are 21 megapixel. Because of the field of view between the two, you can zoom in and still pull in the two different, zoom in far enough, 23 times zoom, but you're not actually optically zooming. You're just switching from one field of view to the other field of view. And then the FLIR camera is running a 320 boson sensor inside of there. So 32 times zoom. There you go. So 32, sorry, not 23.
Which is a first, which is the, industry leading 32x zoom. So we're always pushing. And I think, it won't be long before we see a 32 zoom.
Yeah.
Push to the side.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned the thermal.
Yep. So the thermal side, again, we're the unique thing about this, about the Parrot ships is that they basically, when you take an image, you're able to import these into FLIR tools. FLIR tools is you're able to do a bit more analyzation, what we call thermal tuning, and tune the image to show anomalies or deficiencies in something, and kind of mess with that. You can do this with other thermal images, but the fact that they use both RGB and the thermal together is kind of a unique thing between other manufacturers that just have two different files.
Yeah.
So,
And I would say again, I believe that students, as we introduce them, and I'm going to stop this share, as you get your Part 107, right? You're getting your Part 107 in order to have the ability to act as a remote piloting command. What you don't know is what, and I'm going to take your word, what ship you're going to be asked to pilot when you get your job. And as teachers and instructors, being familiar with Parrot, Skydio, DJI, Autel, these platforms fly similarly, right? Mode 2, altitude, up, down, yaw left, yaw right, slide left. Lacking my terminology here. But they operate the same way. They all operate with an app, right? Whether it's an app on your phone or an app that's built into a smart controller. So the piloting is there, right? We got to teach the stick skills, which is being done with the NIST training and the buckets and the objectively grading, but then to be familiar with the different systems that are out there and what the manufacturers are doing. So because we're talking about the Anafi USA, this drone was manufactured specifically with the military in mind, right? US government. So it is a enterprise drone, and it is something exciting, and it's very new. So it's not like we can talk about it the way we talk about the Mavic 2 Dual or some of the other platforms that have been out for a while, but it's exciting. And to be able to be familiar with these different platforms is great. So what I want to talk about now is and we've got just a few minutes here. I don't know, folks, I don't know if there's another group that the teachers have to move into. I was looking at the schedule. I don't know. I can stay on a little bit longer to talk about the drone delivery stuff and the air taxis. But what I want to have you talk about is that fixed wing drone behind you. And that fixed wing drone behind you has a lot of significance to the state of North Carolina, doesn't it?
Yeah. So
a little, well, in a sense of that it's not a North Carolina drone, but there's a headquarters here.
Yeah, right there. I actually did my training with, I've needed to learn a little bit again, going into selling stuff, because we sell this hardware. Yeah. This is called the EBX. This is made by SenseFly. SenseFly is a sister company to Parrot, who makes the Parrot Anafi. So this is the ecosystem of Pix4D, SenseFly, and Parrot that are all the same company, but you may not know that. But they are based in Raleigh, and they basically have a number of capabilities of showing different types of fixed wing drones that they use. So this one is good for mapping. There's one that's made specifically for agriculture. Yeah. They have, as you're showing, RTK systems and whatnot. But this answers the call to a longer duration flight and data collection without having to bring down the Phantom or the Mavic or anything like that. I mean, this is a mapping drone. There is no UI that shows up on your screen. From the camera on the bottom, the camera itself is, you don't see anything that the drone is flying. Here's another one that's really interesting because of the automation of things. There is no controller for this. It uses basically just a data link that plugs in USB into your screen or into your computer. And from the screen, you're managing all the buttons and flights and deconflictions of aircraft and changing. There is no radio. There's no controller to this,
everything is planned on the
Yeah.
computer. And what you do is you plug in a transmitter when you go out into the field. So you're transmitting all the commands to that fixed wing aircraft through your computer. As you mentioned, it's fixed wing. You've got to hand launch it. We're seeing more fixed wing aircraft become more popular for endurance.
Yes.
We are seeing that vertical takeoff and landing.
With this drone, you know, we're talking an M300 here. If I was to set up a mapping mission and go out and do its thing, I can probably cover 300 acres pretty good at that space. You know, I mean, I say 300, meaning that that's a very like it's zipping. It's not doing high overlap and high side lap. You know, it's zipping through the area. You can probably cover 300. With this guy in the long duration, you can cover almost 1,000 acres
And
at very low overlap.
yeah,
You know?
and
You know,
in one flight, and like as Wayne's pointing out, he's connected with the program here for North Carolina, is that the teachers currently in the classroom are going to be restricted to, I hate to use that word, not restricted, but you know, right now with the way things are rolling out, we're focusing on the quadcopters.
mm-hmm.
And I think it makes sense. That is not an inexpensive fixed wing drone, right? But again, with the why, because we're speaking here to North Carolina educators and maybe other teachers, SenseFly has that presence right there in Raleigh. Troy Hiddle, great guy. He's from Cumberland County, where 910 Drones is based, and he's super open to like having students out there, right? You've been to their facility, cool facility. Yeah. They've got all the aircraft out there. So for educators to know fixed wing endurance flying, we see public safety from a monitoring standpoint, you know, maybe wanting to get into fixed wing or long endurance, and then from natural disasters. So I can kind of link that all together for our state after a hurricane, you know, rolls through. Being able to put something like a fixed wing aircraft out for an endurance long period and map out that large area, it's really an effective platform.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I said this yet, but the same certificate that you need to fly the M300 Mavic 2, the Part 107 is the same, you know, certificate that you're using to fly the fixed wing drone.
Did you notice my camera guy showed up and all of a sudden the camera looks better? I told you.
You're not yellow anymore.
Like I said, I don't know anything about it.
Oh, he just hit you.
The camera guy showed up and here he's like, that looks terrible. I'm like, okay.
So, and then real quick, state drive-by board, awesome. So real quick, because you've got the M300 back there. Again, to show educators, and you got the flyability. We got our inside GPS denied. We could do probably like 5 other webinars just on the different drones.
Oh yeah.
Right, but the Matrice 300 from a public safety, right, heavy industry for the teachers out here to know. Tell them, you know, in a minute or in a nutshell, what is the M300 and what should maybe even students know that are getting a 107 going out into the industry? What is it that teachers should kind of be aware of?
Well, the M300 design, you know, like I said, there's a lot of predecessors to what DJI has done. They put out so many different models of what they called the Matrice series. There's bigger ones, there's small ones. The kind of, again, unique one here is that with also a lot of obstacle avoidance sensors, the top of the machine has multiple sensors all the way around. We've got a full view, front, side, back, rear, top, bottom. And then with a bit of AI built into the payload, and that's the H20T, it's H20 and H20T, we have zoom capability that can be then automated so you can track anything that you want. It's got a rangefinder, laser rangefinder on there to know how far away things are. But if you're really trying to become proficient with this one and understand it, you know, there's so many things that again that it can do, and different payloads that it can do. On this one, I have a single gimbal mount up on the front, but I have the option to put 2 more and then a third one on the top. Of course, what does that do? It's going to kill our flight time, but having 3 sensors on this thing is absolutely insane, and still being able to manage all 3, looking at, doing something. And here, we're right back to the complexity of knowing how to use your sticks and fingers and control and buttons and everything else, all being done. You add more stuff to it, and the complexity increases and the proficiency decreases. You know, they need the practice with it, you know.
And with a system like this, to hit that point with complexity, is you can have multiple operators, right? We talked about connecting 2 remotes to 1 drone earlier in a training environment, but being able to maybe utilize 2 remotes, or am I thinking more, is that less with the Matrice 300?
Like I said, the traditional way is that you have 1 radio that's going to be controlling the drone and 1 radio that's controlling your payloads. That's usually what it is. A camera guy and then the drone guy, right?
Yeah.
That's usually how it's set up. But just again, it's a unique thing that the Mavic 2 can do, control of both. You know, that you can fly it on one,
Yeah,
and then push buttons and fly it on the other. That's kind of a specialty to the Mavic 2 series, to be able to do that. Whereas these are not, they're not set up to do that. But
okay.
But what you can do that's kind of specialized to this is transfer the control. You're not doing it at the same time. You can transfer from one position where the pilot's at to a different position as long as both radios are linked. So you can do that as well. It's just not this. It's not quite the same as the way the Mavic. You know, you're both controlling it on the flight.
Yes,
but you can transfer downrange. So if you're doing a pole a line inspection or a corridor inspection, you can have another person downrange while you're flying until it gets to the point of line of sight being a problem, and then they can pick it up once they see it and transfer over control to them and bunny hop like that if you wanted to do that. That's kind of special to the 300.
Great. Lashunda had asked a question, and I hope I'm pronouncing the name right, but this was going back, I believe, the Anafi US. Does the Anafi USA, does that store the radiometric, right? Is that?
It is actually the USA is a non-radiometric sensor. It is non-radiometric, but you can still look at the thermal images together. Does that make sense? So it is not radiometric because of the sensor that they chose to use. And it's, you know, people get this, again, another portion of confusion in FLIR is just because it's FLIR or thermal, I should see temperature. Not always the case. There is a lot of back end stuff that needs to go into creating that or having that available on any sensor. And if FLIR doesn't actually make a sensor that does that, the boson doesn't do that, and that's what they chose with the boson. It's not a radiometric sensor. Whereas the Anafi Thermal is. Anafi Thermal has a lepton sensor that is radiometric.
And similar with the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, the Dual is not considered to be made radiometric, even though it uses the same sensor, because they didn't do the back end to actually create it to be radiometric. That's DJI, not FLIR. So
right.
Not to confuse everybody.
Yeah. That's great.
I do a lot of webinars and videos specifically on thermal subjects because, again, navigating that is very, very confusing. Very confusing.
Yeah. So here's what I want to add. I want to pop this one more question up, and then I want to let you go, John, because I know you got the other webinar that you want to get prepared for.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Odemast, what do you think about modifying the IR camera? Or let me get this right. How do you think the modified IR camera lens for the ZenMuse X3 does? Is it worth it if I have an X3 laying around?
Okay, so what you're specifically talking about there is putting a infrared lens on it, basically, or a way to modify the camera so it just uses near infrared imagery, not thermal imagery. That's different. This is just doing NDIR, or like I said, near infrared imagery. Believe it or not, all sensors actually are infrared. They usually have some kind of a film on the front of the sensor to then display it in standard RGB, but they're mostly already done that. So what you're doing is stripping that layer off to modify it to now bring it back into an IR camera. If you want to spend the dollars, once it's done, it's done. Like, you're never going to change it back unless you put a specialized filter on it, because now that cover is gone or whatever. So once it's done, it's done. But what it's really made for, to do that, we've already seen very good use cases of having standard infrared or cameras in the agricultural section. Agricultural stuff. That's what most people are doing with infrared in that space. So if you want to change it, it's pretty much you're changing it, and that's it.
So it could.
So I think.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is it could be useful in determining like plant health, right? Yeah. You could get
that case study has already been proven very well to see anomalies or reflection rates off of
reflectance
in that spectrum of light. That's already been done. So
and then to really just to talk about that, and we'll cover this a little in the Friday's mapping, is you take not just that infrared, but you're also taking that blue, green, and those other bands. And
well, not to be confusing, but
yeah,
when you have a multispectral camera, that is multiple cameras that are doing that: red, green, blue, everything else. But to answer the question, that won't produce that because it's only one lens.
It's a single
lens
band.
It's a single camera, single band in infrared. But you can buy, or get cameras that have multiple bands built into them.
Yeah.
They call that a multispectral camera.
Yeah.
So that you can segregate and separate the way those reflections and refractions off of the plants can then be displayed after processing.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, John, I really appreciate it. You jumping on. And thank you. I'm going to just kind of go ahead and I'm going to roll over time here and just talk about delivery drones and some pilotless air taxi stuff.
Sure.
But I don't.
Not really my forte. I mean, I've certainly created things to deliver stuff, drop systems and all kinds of things. In fact, the very, very first commercial drone I ever designed had that capability of dropping basically water bottles for search and rescue, dropping radios and cell phones and stuff, but not in any type of delivery capacity have I been doing much in that space.
Right, like commercial, like jobs, yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So, well, yeah, thank you, John. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it as well.
Awesome. Have a good one.
All right.
All right, well, so we've kind of jumped through some training drones, commercial, enterprise a bit. What I'd like to do now is touch on some of the aircraft, and I'm going to do some screen sharing here to make these companies familiar to what is out there. And if anyone has to drop off, I'm going to keep this going, but it is recorded and it is going to be shared. Dr. Barber will get this and it will get out. But having some experience here locally with a drone delivery company, Flytrex, and I'm going to share my screen. If anyone has any questions about anything that is popping up on what's shown here, just let me know, especially in regards to opportunities like with students, like Part 107 jobs, things like that. So I'm going to bring up a company called Flytrex. And here in the state of North Carolina, with the DOT, and we have a great push for drones, the use of drones, the growth of the drone ecosystem per se. is we have 3 companies in our state that are all pushing to do commercial operations, some of which are hiring currently 107 pilots. So Flytrex is one of these companies. And as you can see, they're leveraging a drone that is 6 motors. It looks very similar to, if you took the box off, this might look very similar to a drone that is being flown commercially or within the industry. And that's because they took a proven working industry drone, they've attached a delivery box to it and created a system to do commercial deliveries to delivery points and backyards, front yards. In this system, you can see it's about safety. So from the operations of these companies, it's how can we safely deliver? This box, bring this photo back, with the Flytrex system, you have a package that is loaded inside the box from this front door. It's attached to a hook that's on a motor. Once that drone is programmed to get to its delivery point, and this is all done through a network, it's like a highway in the sky. So this drone gets to the point where it needs to do its delivery. The buyer or the purchaser of the product, they're going to get on their cell phone like a LAN, like accept delivery. And they'll push accept delivery, and these bottom doors will open up and the package will come down. So with this system, they're maintaining an altitude, much above rooftops, trees, and individuals. So the drone never has to come down. You don't have propellers being exposed, and you don't have noise, because if we bring drone deliveries in, we're going to have more drones in the skies. Nobody wants a drone just coming right down next door to their house. Maybe your neighbor does a lot of deliveries. So keeping that drone at a higher altitude also reduces the noise. So that's Flytrex, and Flytrex is launching, partnered with the NCDOT and the FAA here in North Carolina to bring about commercial drone deliveries. Their setup is we're going to help restaurants, businesses selling items be that mechanism that gets it from A to B. So in Holly Springs, North Carolina, and I could run over, I've got some. So one thing that they're doing here, and I'm going to get to these questions, I just want to cover on Flytrex. The ability to, you have a shopping center, lots of stores, lots of restaurants. You can take now, put all those on a list. So in Holly Springs, North Carolina, we're seeing I'm going to stop the share. In Holly Springs, we have a recreational facility with fields, soccer fields, baseball, and parking. So when you have a day there, there's no food options. You can now utilize drones to eliminate what might have been a 30-minute trip. This is where Flytrex comes in with this delivery system. As well, we have one of the other companies, I'm going to go back to sharing the screen, is not this, not that Zipline. It's called Zipline. Zipline, no. Yes. Zipline is using a fixed wing aircraft that they launch, almost like you see it here in this video, like an aircraft, almost like if an aircraft shooting up an aircraft carrier, they've got a track system and they propel that drone into the air. It can cover very long distances compared to something that Flytrex is doing there, where Flytrex is maybe in a city, in a tight network. Zipline started in being able to deliver blood. to remote locations where it might take days, right, to put it on a mule or have an individual carry it across a long distance. You now have this zipline aircraft that can carry units of blood. So individuals that need that for whatever reason can get it sooner now with this zipline delivery system. Zipline launched in the Charlotte area, an operation once with this coronavirus pandemic kind of happened. They're delivering face masks and medical supplies with their system. So here in North Carolina, again, I'm not going to say a city, I'm almost positive it's Charlotte. I'll just bring up careers here. They launched an operation. They put up a facility, and you can see right here, it looks like they may have filled their pilot positions, but they're looking for maintenance technicians. And this is in, well, it doesn't say specifically, but that is Zipline, and that's what they're doing in regards to deliveries. The third company for drone deliveries that I do want to introduce you to is not local to the state of North Carolina, but in Virginia, the company Wing is doing similar to what Flytrex is doing with residential commercial drone deliveries. Some of you may have seen this, but it is a good shot of the platform to show up. And you can go on wing.com. This is a 12 motor UAS that can take off vertically, and then it flies forward just like a fixed wing aircraft would. So they don't need that long range like a zip line. They don't have to launch it off of a launch pad, for lack of better terms. They can take off vertically. They can get to where they need to efficiently, and then they can lower down if as needed to drop that system. So you can see it's similar with a hook system. However, here, from what I've seen, I don't have firsthand experience of flying a wing aircraft. The user will actually need to go unclip their package. With Flytrex, a self-engineered hook system allows the package to release itself. So no one has to go underneath or below the drone. Is there, I'm going to jump over to these questions real quick. The link for Jon's multispectral webinar, I can try to find that link, and what I'm going to do is in the chat right here, I'm going to drop Jon's email and my email as well. So if you have any questions for Jon, you can reach out to him via that email address. And as well, if you're interested, Lashana, because you're asking specifically to like multispectral sensors, and maybe if this is things that are happening here in North Carolina, we do have access to the EV drone with that multispectral sensor. So being able to figure out how to integrate that in education and maybe what you're doing, definitely reach out. So I'm going to stop the screen share. Does every drone startup business require an operations manual? And this is a question from Durvan. I don't know if you're still on. May have dropped off. But every drone startup business, I wouldn't say there's a requirement to have an operations manual. If you can see right here, this is actually the 910 drones flight ops manual. And it's highly encouraged. When we're working with businesses and organizations to implement drone programs, yes, we always say you should be implementing an operations manual. And I do believe, if David is honored, Wayne's still on, I believe that the flight ops manual is something that the DPI has put out, and I put my email in there wrong. I'm not even typing. But yes, having an operations manual is important to the safety of the operations, and then as you expand operations when you bring pilots in. Yes, and Wayne did say DPI has an ops manual. So as an instructor, with CT, with DPI, you can get access to that ops manual. Where could a pilot get assistance to writing an ops manual? You could look at similar ops manuals, but you could also reach out to a local company, 910 Drones. We do support individuals, businesses, and organizations with implementing ops manuals. But enough with that, with the drone deliveries. I hope that folks that are tuning in are just kind of taking notes of wing, Flytrex, zipline and Flytrex especially matter at UPS because things are happening right here. So when we're talking about educating students, getting them their Part 107, the ability to take some experience, have that, as we saw with Kitty Hawk, right? We're able to put in a student's flight time. We're able to put in instructor's flight time. So if there's a way to pull that, so as a student graduates high school, they have some logbook experience. They can say, I've flown this much. Companies like Flytrex and Zipline are going to be looking for individuals like that because delivery drone operations are only successful or practical if they can be done at scale. And you're going to have multiple pilots. Now, one of the last things I want to mention and bring up for the teachers and educators in regards to pilotless air taxis is that there is a lot going on, and what we will see in even 2 years might not even be what's being worked on today. What we see in 10 years most likely won't be much of what we see today. But one thing relevant to the state of North Carolina is a company called eHang. And eHang is developing a pilotless unmanned air taxi, or has developed and has flown it. You can see, I'm not sharing. Here I am, I'm thinking you guys are looking at it. This here is the eHang. And this project started, this aircraft began at Duke University here in North Carolina. A student had started this, was looking at this technology, went through like an incubator through the university. And then this eventually, I don't know the entire story, but after years, this pilotless air taxi is what came to be. This, I can't remember exactly whether it was the beginning of this year or right at the end of last year, there was a demonstration done in North Carolina. It was the first public demonstration of a successful pilotless air taxi flight. And that was very significant. There are other companies, Hyundai, some of the motor car companies that are taking what they know in regards to vehicle design and trying to, enter this market, because pilotless air taxis will not ever be maybe as common as vehicles. There's going to be quite a bit of them. So eHang is definitely a company to kind of be familiar with and maybe introduce students to and make them aware of. Now, the last, check if I have any questions. No. So to kind of wrap this up, all these different systems, drones that are currently available, and there's just so many that there's not enough time to really touch on each and every one of them, is they all use the same engineering in order to fly. You have motors, ESCs, flight controller, a receiver that picks up your signals. So when we're looking at, and I'll show you this again, when we're looking at this pilotless air taxi, or we're looking at the drone, it's this drone, I'm going to some rabbit hole. The components and parts, the components and parts that make up this unmanned aircraft system, from motors, its electrical wiring, to your ESCs and flight controller, is the same engineering that's going into this EHang pilotless air taxi. It's just on a much bigger level. So that's what is truly, truly, I think, amazing is even from a piloting side. And Jon touched on it with the NIST trainer, with those buckets that rotate. The ability to control the sticks, to pilot a $69 drone around it, you can then put in that Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual that's a $4,000 drone. The stick skills are the same. Yvonne asks for help from across the state. Okay. Excellent. So with that being said, I don't see any other questions that have come in at this time. If anyone tuning in has any questions about any specific system, even if it's not one that we touched on in detail today, maybe it's a Phantom 4 Pro that you have, definitely reach out via email. See, we got a hand up. Yvonne.
Hi.
Yvonne, did you want to say something?
Yeah, definitely. I did want to say something. I asked a question, two questions earlier on. I asked two questions earlier regarding operational manual and assistance, or where could I find information in writing an operations manual. My questions were: does every drone startup have to is required to have an operational manual, and where can a pilot get assistance in writing an operational manual?
Yeah, so, and thanks for adding that in. Apologies. Every startup is not required to have an operations manual. And here in, say, North Carolina, we're hitting more of that educator space. If you want, Yvonne, you can shoot me an email.
Sure. Just drop your email in the chat, and I'll just pick it up from there. Could shoot you.
Okay, yeah, my email, I'll drop it in here again, and you can connect with me, and we can kind of discuss that.
All right, cool. I'll come in there.
Awesome. Thanks, Yvonne.
All right, thanks much, man.
You're welcome. So maybe, do you think good fixed wing to get some? So definitely any drone, and this is what I would like to hammer on. Great, thanks for asking this question, Paul. Paul asked about the Parrot Disco. Is it a good fixed wing to get some fixed wing experience with? And I'm going to say as you mentioned, it's for you, not the students with DPI. And this is great because as educators, being able to get hands-on with different systems, even if it's not through the platforms that the school provides, it's only going to make you a better instructor for your students. So any fixed wing drone that you can get fixed wing experience on is going to be a great drone. And I hope that after watching this, any instructors that have telos or have Propel aircraft or some Hubsan drones can see a little bit more clearly why it's not really about the platform that matters. It's how can you, incorporate the NIST training? How can you incorporate an activity, whether it's a timed flight, it's a box. Students, we don't want to do easy things. Easy things become boring. So being able to present that challenge to a student. So yeah, any Paul, the Parrot Disco, there's folks locally here when we get together and do fly-ins, a commercial guy that has the Parrot Disco, using it commercially. So yeah, that's a great drone to get fixed wing experience on. The reason that this is the good, the great, and the okay of drones is because I truly don't think that there is any one bad drone. There are certainly drones that won't work for specific operations or solutions, but when it comes to training and education and learning, there really isn't any bad drone. Now, don't have any really any more questions coming in at this time. Like I said, 910 Drones, we're located right here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. We're working with 4 high schools in 4 different counties, and drones are a great tool. So it's following, right, this Part 107 and then this mapping curriculum that DPI is putting out, and then finding out how to maybe tailor it a little bit to what's specific to your area, and to what maybe you as an instructor know well, because drones are a tool and they can work across so many different industries. So if you have questions, like I said, about the platforms, software, hey, this is the equipment that we currently have. What can we do with this? What can't we do with it? Definitely reach out. Email is Paul Rossi, ROSSI, at 910drones.com. Definitely reach out, and thank you everybody for tuning in and for participating. Thanks to Jon with RMUS. You can check out his YouTube. Lots of great information on enterprise drones. And 910 Drones, we've got YouTube. We're putting out information. Consume content there's lots of informational stuff out there across YouTube to be able to learn about these different systems. So again, just thanks for tuning in. Any questions, reach out. Everybody have a great